All right, good evening, folks. Welcome to Monday Night Law, Kirk's Law Corner. I'm your host, Kirk Pendergrass. Hopefully everybody's connected. Should be good. And YouTube is working this week. I got my 1 week suspension over with now, so let people get on here and let me get my tabs going. Try to watch the comments the best that I can. All right, there's that. Let's see. All right. Hello out there on Rumble. Rumble's starting to pick up a little bit, so that's good. I warned you guys that YouTube might try to take me down. That's why I kind of took a break there, because both Facebook and YouTube tried to take me down. So be prepared, get subscribed on the Rumble channel and on Telegram. And like I've said before, most of my stuff that I'm doing anymore is on Telegram. So highly recommend people getting on the Telegram. Let's see. This is gonna audio. On Telegram. Yep, there we go. Live chat. Hello, Jax, Kathy, and Lisa, and Thomas out there on YouTube. I'll go find my Facebook. Before we really get started here, I just want to say Merry Christmas to everybody, because this is the holiday weekend coming up. So, man, is it getting cold here in Idaho. I'm sure there's some other places that are getting cold too, but we're getting down in the teens and below. 12 degrees, 14 degrees. I'm sure there's others that are a little bit colder than we are, but we're a dry cold here. All right, here we go. Facebook is muted. Okay, good. Thank you, Randall, out there on Facebook, and Chad, Cece. Wait, I gotta go on that. Where's comments? All right, Maine, Alaska. All right. And of course, my brother Rob out there. How you doing, brother? Good to see you. Try and watch these guys here. All right. Oh. Telegram. Please make your comments here. There you go. For those folks out there on Telegram, so you can make your comments there, and then I can watch those through Telegram. All right, so for tonight, what I have here is, for those on Telegram, got to see the little clip that I made. How's it going, Eager Beaver? How you doing, brother? KrisAnne Hall. And gentleman James out there sent that to me a little far back there, and I getting caught up on some emails and stuff, and I was like, ooh, yeah, that is a good one. And I've actually seen KrisAnne Hall in person a couple of times. When I was down in California with Tony Pellegrino, we actually went down to Yuba City and listened to them speak at the Yuba City church there, and went down to Sacramento. Some of you may remember that. Went down to the Capitol there. And some of you may remember what Tony Pellegrino and I used to do. Last year was our final year, 4 years in a row, and it's just fallen on its face. We cannot get people, We the People Idaho, that Tony Pellegrino and I, kind of, mostly Tony put it together and had some help from others, but it was kind of the both of us behind it, working together to produce it, promote it, and all that. But we had KrisAnne Hall speak one time there, and I spoke right after her. And you know me, folks, exposing the bar is the fraud at the root of our problem. At least one of the problems within our society as a whole is that the bar has taken over. And again, that's from the Reconstruction Acts of 1871, bringing in the bar, American Bar Association in 1878, and then this code, this Roman civil law, the Code of Civil Procedure in 1881. So, they pretty much have infiltrated the legislature. They have just enough members in there to control what goes on, and then especially Congress, right? And then they sit behind every single executive agency. There's a member of the bar sits over there in the corner. And then the whole entire judicial branch is ran by bar members. So I wanted to play this video, and I took little footnotes here of timestamps. So let's see. Yep, share sound. Now, one of the things that kind of starts off with here is that they don't teach them the law, right? And again, I've already put it out there. This is under fair use, by the way, and for entertainment and educational purposes, which is what this video was actually put out to begin with, is the non-compliant movie, published here on Rumble, July 7th, 2021. Now, like I said, I've heard her speak many times, different places, live. So without further ado, we're gonna move into like right around the 10-minute mark. And actually, I'm just gonna go ahead and play kind of from the beginning here.
Part of this with us have to be.
And it was like 6.
One man reaching.
Astounding.
Right here.
Every period in history that involves monumental change, good or bad, has always begun with one person taking a stand.
With
Every
one person
turn of event through history hinged
making a stand.
upon a single person. For good or for bad, it always came down to a single individual.
One man reaching out to others, to educate, to inspire, to ignite them into action.
That's what I'm trying to do, folks. I'm trying to educate and inspire you folks into action. What's up, Corruption Detector out there on YouTube? Good to see you. So the one part there, this part right here, is the part that I cut out of here, just a couple of minutes, because this is so inspiring right here. It even fired me up again. But this is what I've talked about before, is that, you know, there's not a whole lot of people out there doing what I'm doing, if any, actually showing the law and remedy. Remedy is due process of law, and relief, to get the relief that you have the right to demand. So, let's go ahead and continue this.
Had not been for James Otis Jr., one man standing up and saying, "No more. Not only will I not participate, I will not comply, and I will teach others the power of noncompliance as a right of the people, the power of one to reach many, to unite under the banner of liberty, to the securing of the rights of every individual today, tomorrow, and for posterity." It is human nature to look for a leader. It is human nature to stay where you're comfortable.
We can't wait for what is the group going to do when we get 100 people, when we get 1,000 people together. Boy, then we can do something.
But sometimes, through a course of events, through a long train of usurpations, we have to become uncomfortable. Change will not happen without movement. And when we've been sedentary, when we've been comfortable for a very long time, movement is uncomfortable. We have been training our generations in the wrong information about government. We have been training them to be submissive and compliant to authority. We have forgotten that we, the people, are the rulers over government, and we have allowed government to be the rulers over people.
And there it is, folks. All political power is inherent in the people. We'll hear this again here later. But it's our duty. It's our right. It's our power. They're supposed to be the servants, and we're supposed to be the masters. But because society as a whole has been dumbed down, they don't teach this. And she's going to reiterate this here when I jump right after this to the 10-minute mark. Even she admits that she was not taught the law in law school.
If we truly want that to change, we have to stop looking for leaders and start being them. I believe you're...
Even Carl Miller, you know, that's the man who really inspired me for all of this, was that to be somebody, right? Somebody ought to do something about this. Be a somebody. So those of you that have watched Carl Miller know that that's what he said there. And I'm like, oh, man. So Carl Miller is the man who inspired me to be a somebody.
Here today with us. You have sacrificed this period of your time today because you believe that America is worth fighting for. I believe that you're here today because you recognize on this level that it's going to take a certain amount of sacrifice. Unanimously, the groups that I speak to all believe, all know that our governments are out of control. Right, left, liberal, conservative. But everywhere I go, what do you think the most asked question I get is? How do we fix this? We have activist judges. We have governors that act more like monarchs than representatives of the people. We have sheriffs who blindly enforce law. We have county commissioners and city councilmen and state legislators that simply ignore the people and trample the rights of their constituents. We have a Congress that seems more concerned about politics and special interests than the liberties of the people. How do we fix this? If we had been teaching history properly for the last 100 years, If we had been teaching the Constitution properly for the last 100 years, we wouldn't have that question. We wouldn't be where we are today, mind you. But we wouldn't have that question because we'd know exactly what to do.
I started reading the Constitution itself and what it means. And I thought to myself, we weren't taught this in law school. We don't teach this in grade.
See what she said there? They're not even taught the Constitution in law school. They're not even taught the Constitution. They're most certainly not taught law. And this is the problem we have in society today, is we are all led to believe that these members of the bar went to law school and they're the ones that know the law. But the reality is here, they don't even teach them the law. Our rights as the law, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers under the consent of the governed, which she even reiterates here. That's the Declaration of Independence. So fundamentally and principally, government is instituted to secure our rights. Rights as the law.
Grade school. We don't teach this in high school. We don't teach this in college. These are things that anybody can get on their cell phone. They can read this. They can know this. Why is this information being hidden from us? Why aren't we being taught? And I want to teach you
To equip you.
so you can know the truth about limited government power.
To inspire.
And I'm here to teach you what your rights are, including the administration of government and claiming and exercising that right of political power, the right to alter, reform, or abolish anything and any time we deem it necessary, which she doesn't talk about, ever. I want to teach you how it's supposed to be, what the real law is, not the shit made up.
You, to ignite you, to be the leader your spirit is calling you to be. Now, history is our guide. Patrick Henry said, I have but one lamp by which my feet are guided, and that's the lamp of experience. I know no way to judge the future but by the past.
And I've done a lot of studying of history of law, and what our founders have gone through over and over again. And I keep finding this same thing. Okay, so I'm going to jump to about the 37-minute mark here. There's a lot of good stuff in here, but there's some finer points that I want to hit on.
Our states are sovereign and independent. The Constitution is still a legally binding contract. And the federal government is still legally limited in its authority. And the only thing that has to change is this. Because we've been taught the wrong things for a long time. Studying this, understanding this, was kind of mind-blowing to me. 3 years of law school, nobody taught me this. Do you know that our law schools don't actually teach the Constitution anymore? What they teach is constitutional law, which tells us, lawyers and judges, and eventually the people, that judges and lawyers know more about the Constitution than the men who wrote it. That it's irrelevant because it was written so long ago, and it can't possibly have meaning today. See, the Constitution is not a statute book that says you can't drive faster than 75 on the interstate. It is a contract of timeless principles that create and define government, period, for a singular purpose. What is that? To secure our rights. Do you know what's ironic?
Now, talk about the Constitution. Let's go to some American jurisprudence, some constitutional law. This is Volume 16. American Jurisprudence, Volume 16, Second Edition, Constitutional Law. Very beginning. And this is what I got down at the Law Library back in August of 2017. This is Section 1, the very beginning. Okay? Definition and nature of Constitution and constitutional law in and of itself, right? Let's make that as big as I possibly can for you folks. As used herein, the word Constitution means a declaration of fundamental laws or principles for the government of a nation or state. A Constitution represents the supreme written will of the people. And see, here again, folks, look at the words that are being used here, especially for those out there trying to say that we need to change our status to a national. And do not ever come across the word national in here. People. We the people, not we the nationals. We the people. All political power is inherent in the people, not nationals. Now, I've already debunked this BS about a national coming from the United States Code. That's the only place it comes from. And it was created after the Reconstruction Acts when the corporation was created. So that is a status of a corporation, of the corporation, United States Inc. It's not a legitimate status here in America. We have inhabitants, or the free inhabitants. We have the free people. And then we have citizens. Those are the statuses we have here in America. Okay? Regarding the framework for their government, where a constitution asserts a certain right or lays down a certain principle of law or procedure, it speaks for the entire people as their supreme law, and it is paramount authority for all that is done in pursuance of its provisions. A constitution that embodies fundamental values and articulates the citizens' common aspiration for constitutional governments and the rule of law. See, again, we go by the rule of law, not the rule of man, which is why statutes are not law. That's color of law. Enactments of the legislature are not law of the land. A state constitution is likewise the supreme written will of the people of the state regarding the framework for their government and is subject to the limitations found in the federal constitution. Although a constitution may be either written, in the case of the United States, or unwritten, in the case of Great Britain, the word constitution, as applied to the organization of our federal and state governments, always implies a written document. That is the instrument of government, which is understood to have been enacted by the direct action of the people, providing for the form of their government and defining the powers of the several departments within it, thus creating a fundamental law, which again is absolute and unalterable, except through amendment by the people from which it emanated. And it has to be done through a convention, because that's what the supreme law of the land, Article 5, you're going to make law, you got to go through a convention. Because this is law of the land, not statutes. Statutes are enactments, again. But see, it has to be done in the same manner it was, right, from which it emanated, how it came into being, through a convention. Constitutional law, which deals with the interpretation and construction of constitutions, the application of this fundamental law to statutes and other public acts. See, these are public acts, enactments of the legislature. Because of the American governmental system occupies an extremely important position in the jurisprudence of this country. Because constitutions in this country, rather than stating inflexible specific rules of conduct, contain broad principles capable of accommodating societal changes. Thus, constitutional revisions gather meaning from the experience of the people, and courts should expect that modern society will mold and shape constitutional principles into new and useful forms. But see here again, that's bar speak, not the courts. We already have the rule of law, rights as the law of nature, that to secure these rights, that's right, those unalienable rights, to assume the powers of the earth and the laws of nature. Now, for those that have watched before, talking about the law of nations or the law of nature, rules and principles of the law of nature. See, a principle is like the plus sign, the minus sign, the multiplication sign, the division sign. It's unalterable. Okay? Any man of sound mind, possessed in logic and reason, shall come to a reasonable conclusion based in reality that 2 plus 2 equals 4, or they are insane. Because the fundamental principles of mathematics dictate the correct answer. Same thing with our rights. Those are fundamental principles of law. That's the rule of law. Just like maxims of law are the rule of law. It rules over the Constitution. It rules over everything that's created under the Constitution. Because they're fundamental principles. Just like the rule of chess or rules of monopoly. Those are principles. They're immutable, unalterable. Okay? We're not a democracy here where rights get put to a vote. Oh, you're destroying our democracy. Yeah, that's right. Because you unlawfully, fundamentally altered our republic back into a corporation and a monarchy. That's what they did. Constitution is intended to endure for ages to come and must adapt itself to future that can only be seen dimly, if at all. No, the Constitution doesn't need to adapt. It's unalterable. Right? We don't need to change it. Not for light and transient causes. Where the Constitution prescribes the manner in which something may be accomplished, the means are exclusive. In other words, it has to be done this way because it's the supreme written will of the people. The servants that go in there and fill those emoluments of the seats in that Constitution cannot alter the laws of its own creation. Now this part 2, distinction between constitutions and statutes. The Constitution differs from a statute in that a statute ordinarily provides some details of the subject of which it treats. Therefore, the statute's based off of subject matter jurisdiction from the Constitution itself, which we're going to hear Chris Ann Hall talk about that again, of which it treats, whereas a Constitution usually states broad general principles and builds a substantial foundation of general framework of the law and the government. The Constitution is a framework of government containing the general principles upon which the government must function, intended not merely to remedy existing conditions, but to govern future contingencies. That's how well written our Constitution is. And remember, law of the land literally means due process of law. So the Constitution is nothing but a bunch of processes for bringing things into being. It is a compilation of fundamental laws of the jurisdiction and embodies principles upon which the jurisdiction's government was founded. So we got the bedrock, that would be our rights. Then we do the foundation, which is the government, and then we build on that. Okay? And it's all intended to secure our rights, to defend that body of law, the common law, the law of nature. Because that's the body of law that's common to all. Constitution made for the people and by the people, and is above all an embodiment of the will of the people, deriving its force directly from the people themselves. Statutes, by contrast, are enactments and rules for the government of civil conduct. Oh, that's right. That's for them. It's not law. It's policy. Promulgated by the legislative authority of a state. Instead of general principles, a statute provides details of the subject of the statute. Because constitutions constitute the supreme law, they preempt contrary statutes or rules and stand above, they say, legislative law, its enactments. It's not law. Rights are the law. Synonymous. Comes from the French word droit, right or law. Thus, where a constitution speaks plainly on a particular matter, it must be given force and effect as paramount law. And where a statute or other rule and a constitutional provision are in conflict, the constitutional provision must prevail. Okay? It has been said that a constitution is but a higher form of statutory law. Really, kind of is. So that, for example, the state constitutions look to where a court is searching for statutory law on a subject matter jurisdiction, and there's no relevant statute per se. In any event, both constitutional and statutory should be liberally construed to further the goal of allowing the people to express their will. No, technically speaking, it's supposed to be narrowly construed. There again, the bar come in, oh no, it should be liberally. No. It is to be narrowly construed when giving powers to government. That's a fact. When it comes to applying to the people, then it is supposed to be liberally construed to defend our rights. The people's constitutional standards must always prevail over the legislative statutory standards, should the latter be lower. Duh! That's just frickin' Captain Obvious. Statute exempting tax return for minimum wage, forget about that. Statutes are construed to accord with constitutions, not vice versa. Okay?
The Constitution is a contract. Your pundits and think.
What'd she say there? Constitution is a contract? How many times have I said that? Over the years, many times. Sometimes it's referred to as a social compact, but like she's going to reiterate here, our founders called it a contract many times. It's a contract of employment. And if you're not under contract of employment, it doesn't apply to you. Oh, wait, that's what she says right here.
Think tanks and professors will call it the contract theory or the compact theory. Interesting. When the people who actually wrote it call it a compact, I don't know how you can call that a theory. The Constitution is the only contract in America where lawyers and judges refuse to apply contract law. You see,
why would they refuse to apply contract law? Because it would totally destroy all the shit made up they've created.
I had the honor to debate a law professor at the University of Miami. And the Federalist Society brought me in to talk about how to interpret the Constitution. Using contract law, there is only one way to apply the Constitution. This is not the opportunity for think tanks and judges and lawyers and Supreme Court justices to make it up as they go along. Contract law says you must first go back to something we call the meeting of the minds. The meeting of the minds is where the parties to the contract sat down and told us what the contract was supposed to do, how it's supposed to work. But this modern application of interpretation of the Constitution, brainwashing the people into believing that the Constitution is not a standard, that it has no meaning, and after all, it's a living, breathing document, is contrary to contract law.
No. Say it isn't so.
At this debate, because the law professor was trying to teach us how the Constitution has no meaning, it's written too long ago, the people are dead, we can't possibly know what they meant, which is another lie, by the way, because they wrote reams and reams and reams about what they meant. But you see, I asked a singular question. I said, okay, if the Constitution, which is a contract, is a living, breathing document, would it be okay for us to sit down with my colleague here, the law professor, and the dean of the law school, and go over her contract? See, what if the dean looked at the law professor and said, we realize what we meant when we sat down and created your employment contract, but after all, it's a living, breathing document, and it doesn't really mean what we meant when we wrote it. It means what we want it to mean today. How do you think that law professor would like her employment contract to be viewed as a living, breathing document? Now, that was the point in the presentation where the dean of the law school went like this.
Right? You can't
But you see,
alter
we just simply
the contract.
have to apply some thought and some information and education that we've been denied. This is how it works. The states are inferior to the people. They are their creator. They are superior to the federal government in reserved powers. If we just simply taught that, things would be so different today. It's a check and balance on power that rests in the hands of the people. How do you check that power? Now let me remind you once again, we are talking about a separation of power between the state and the federal government, but we're not really talking about principles of proper government. Now I love analogies, so let me do it this way. We are going to pretend in my analogy that I have just
Hopefully that
stolen
fixed a little bit of
Ben's car.
feedback that was out there.
Okay? And while we're pretending, it's a Maserati. How's that? Okay. I've just stolen Ben's Maserati. Now, do I have the authority to drive Ben's Maserati? No. Do I have the authority to sell Ben's Maserati? If I sell Ben's Maserati, is it a legally binding sale? No. Because the power over that Maserati was never legally delegated to me. That means I have no authority legally over that vehicle, and any act I conduct with that Maserati is null and void.
Imagine that. Null and
Does Ben have to
void.
sue me to get his Maserati back? No. He simply has to take the title deed, which is the legal delegation of power over dominion of that property, to the local officials, your sheriff possibly, and then the sheriff has to return it to him as the legal owner. When government uses power that is not delegated, it is stealing that power. These are not just simply unconstitutional acts. They are criminal acts. Because the Constitution is called what? The supreme law of the land. When the federal government is exercising power not been delegated to it, it is violating the supreme law of the land. When you violate the law, what are you called? A criminal. Look, I understand that this is unsettling and this is uncomfortable. But you have to understand, it is the government breaking the law, not us.
Yes. It's them.
The Constitution
Them
of the
undelegated
United States
powers
is
and
the
its
supreme
criminal
law of
acts,
the
as she
land.
says.
It says so in the Constitution itself. Article 6, Clause 2. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Now notice it says the Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, are the supreme law of the land. Notice it does not say every law created by Congress is the supreme law of the land. Do you see that?
That's right.
There is a condition. Because if it's not made according to the Constitution, then the Constitution cannot be the supreme law of the land. Because you see, the Constitution is supreme without any condition, right? This Constitution shall be the supreme law of the land. But the laws made by Congress are only the supreme law of the land when they are made consistent with the Constitution. Now think about this. If a law can be made that's inconsistent to the Constitution, how can the Constitution be a supreme law? It
Just
can't.
covered that right out of
Free
American
will.
jurisprudence. Nope. Void for any effect.
The laws of the United States, which are made in pursuance thereof, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Now, what happens if we grammatically insert some negatives there? Laws of the United States, which are not made in pursuance to the Constitution, are not the supreme law of the land, which means the judges in every state shall not be bound thereby. What this constitutional document is telling us is that laws created by Congress, executive orders created by a president, opinions created by the Supreme Court that are not made consistent with the Constitution are not binding on the states. James Madison says, in the case of deliberate, palpable, and dangerous exercise of other powers not granted, the states have the right to interpose. Why do the states have the right to step up and tell the federal government no?
Why is that?
Because they are the creators of the federal government. They are the creators of the Constitution. They know what they created. They know when the federal government is on.
And that's the thing, is right? Is all political power is inherent in the people. We created the Constitution. So this is the law of creation. This goes back to Law of Nations, Book 1, Chapter 3, Section 34. The question was asked and answered, does the legislature have the authority to alter the fundamental law or the Constitution? The answer is no, because they can't alter the laws of their own creation. It's just mind-blowing to think that these servants would have the power to alter the laws of their own creation. And this is why they don't want us to read the Constitution. Because that's the limitations of government. That's the delegations of power. And if it's not in the Constitution, that power doesn't exist. Because that's the contract of employment. You get to exercise these powers. You get the privilege. It's not a right. Rights are the law, right? When we talk about the law of nature, like the right to freedom of speech, the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness is among these unalienable rights. And that to secure those rights, governments are instituted to protect them from being infringed upon.
Operating outside of its creation. But notice he says they not only have a right, but they are duty bound. How many of you will admit that a duty is greater than a right? A right is something you passively have, but a duty implies obligation to act, doesn't it? Why?
Right. Actually, rights impose a duty. So rights are above duties. See, the right imposes the duty. Where one has a right, the other owes him a duty to, what? Not trespass upon his property. It's called a common law trespass. And that's where we get into, if I can pull that, property. Where we get common law trespass. Now this is Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Property, that which is peculiar or proper to any person, that which belongs exclusively to one, in the strict legal sense, an aggregate of rights which are guaranteed and protected by the government. Well, I'll be darned. That's why it's unalienable, unable to place a lien upon them, because they are our property. You can't place a lien upon them. You can't touch them. It's trespass. It's a common law trespass because our rights are the common law. All of these rights that we have in common. The term is said to extend to every species of valuable right and interest. More specifically, ownership, the unrestricted and exclusive right to a thing. The right to dispose of a thing in every legal way, to possess it, to use it, and to exclude everyone else from interfering with it. If it's not my property, or if it is my property and I have the right to exclude everyone else from interfering with it, wouldn't that mean like driver's license and registration and insurance? Yeah, like she said earlier. Who said that we can't go faster than 75 miles an hour on the interstate? Oh, that would be them bills of attainder and bills of pains and penalties. Because, well, you know, we said so, and there's a sign there. I could care less what your sign says. Unless I cause injury, loss, or harm to another man, no man has standing to claim a right of cause of action. No bills of attainder. They're strictly prohibited in our form of government. Article 1, Section 9, Federal, and Article 1, Section 10. That's the code, folks. As I've showed before. Civil is the Roman civil law. That's that code. That code of civil procedure and all that crap they brought in 1881 and 1878. They brought back the Roman civil law, which is under the monarchy. Okay? And like it says in Bouvet's Law Dictionary 1856, that it's enforced through bills of pains and penalties. If you do this, that's a fine or jail time. Where's the victim? Where's the accuser? Where's the man who's got standing to claim a right to a cause of action here? Oh, well, you know, we don't need that. We can prosecute by information. No, you cannot. It's almost like our founders said that in the 6th Amendment. That's right. All criminal blah, 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 blah is supposed to be done by all capital offenses or infamous crimes are to be prosecuted by indictment. Only. There's no getting around that. Okay? But they have. But they fundamentally altered our form of government. Again. Let's see. That dominion or indefinite right of use or disposition which one may lawfully exercise over particular things or subjects. The exclusive right of possession, enjoying, and disposing of a thing. The highest right a man can have to anything, being used for that right which one has to lands and tenements, goods or chattels, goods, automobile, which no way depends on another man's courtesy. I don't need another man's permission to utilize any of my frickin' property. None. And therefore, we can't delegate that power to government. Because if no man has that power, then no man, as a set of men, the people, can delegate a power that we do not possess ourselves first to government. Because maxim of law. Rule of law here. What I cannot do in my person, I cannot do through the agency of another. Government is an agency. Agents, right? So if I can't do it, then sure the heck can't create a constitution, creating government, and delegate a power that I do not possess myself first. It's literally impossible. I have the right to defend my rights. That comes from the law of nature. That's right. But over here under personal property, in broad and general sense, everything that is the subject of ownership, not coming under denomination of real estate. So we're not talking about personal property as real estate. Real estate falls under regular property. Okay? A right or interest in things personal, or right or interest less than freehold in realty, or any right or interest which one has in things movable. Right? The term is generally applied to property of a personal or movable nature, as opposed to property of a local or immovable character, such as land or houses. Okay? The latter being called real property versus personal property. This also goes into what was said before, our chattel, right? Our sons and daughters are our chattel, our property, our personal property. They have no authority over our property. That's a common law trespass. Get off my property. Now. You're trespassing the law. Right, says the law. Okay? Proper diction, folks. All right. Let's go back.
Why are we duty bound? Because the states created the federal government and we created the states. And the only reason government exists is to what? Secure the rights of the people. And when the federal government is operating outside of its constitutional boundaries, your rights are not secure. So how do we interpose? See, that word interpose means to eclipse. And it's the state's authority, the state's right, and their duty to step up and say to the federal government, no, you cannot exercise that power in our state because it is not a power that we delegated to you. We must stand and say no to protect the rights of the people, because that's the only reason that we exist. How do you interpose? The several states who formed the Constitution, see, I'm not making this up, being what? Sovereign and independent, have the unquestionable right to judge of infractions against the Constitution. Why? Because they created the Constitution. And that a nullification by those, what? Sovereignties of all unauthorized acts is the rightful remedy. What is Jefferson saying? The power of the state to check and balance unauthorized authority exercised by the government rests in our power to say no. And if we don't have the authority to say no, then we are not free. Remember, if they're made in pursuance to the Constitution, then they are the supreme law of the land. But if they are not, then we say no.
I'm going to jump to 55.
Alexander Hamilton says this: there is no position which depends on clearer principles than that every act of a, what is that? Delegated authority, contrary to the tenor of the commission under which it's exercised, which is a long way of saying original intent. If you're not applying the Constitution the way we intended it, then your acts are null and void.
Yeah,
The
if you're
state
not,
cannot exercise
if you don't have subject matter jurisdiction from the Constitution, your act is void. Plain and simple. No ifs, ands, or buts.
any greater power than we are lawfully allowed to exercise as an individual. What obligation do you have to submit yourself to an authority asserted that has no legal authority? Just this one. Just the one that you rationalize in your mind.
We're supposed to be using our brains, folks.
The only reason we submit to unlawful authority is, number one, we've been trained to. Number two, we're too comfortable to do anything else. Or number three, we're afraid. But we need to understand the authority that we possess as the ultimate check and balance rests in peaceful non-compliance of unconstitutional acts. Null and void. We shall not comply. We must know that. We must believe that. We must enforce that. Samuel Adams said, he said, it's a serious consideration that should weigh heavy upon our hearts, that ages and millions yet unborn will be the miserable sharers of our experience. When we comply with unlawful authority, we give that unlawful authority. We give it power, not just over ourselves, but over future generations. We create a mental precedent that says, well, we've been doing that way forever, so it must be okay. Which means our children will grow up believing that this stolen authority is actual lawful authority. Remember, I stole Ben's Maserati, right?
This is good here.
Let's pretend that I knew when Ben and his wife were going on vacation. And I knew that they were going to the Bahamas for 3 weeks. The day they jumped on the plane, I stole his Maserati. I drove around for 3 weeks. Right? Everybody who saw me driving Ben's car assumed I had a legal authority to do so. Right? But I stole it. Do I have a legal authority? So Ben and his wife come back from vacation, all tan and relaxed and happy. And they notice the car is gone. And I've been driving it for 3 weeks. Does Ben have to say, oh, well, you know, it's been 3 weeks. I guess they own it now? No. What does Ben have the right to do? He has the right to take it back. You see, in law, we have these two things.
We have the right to take it back. If our property's been stolen from us, we have every right to take it back.
Without a transfer legally of authority. His absence, his negligence never transferred authority to me over that vehicle, which means he retains the right to say no. Does he have to sue me to get his car back if I've been driving it for 3 weeks? No. Ben having to sue me to get his car back because I've been driving it for 3 weeks is not only unnecessary, it's ridiculous, and it is dangerous.
Yeah. Because then we're going to set it up that, oh, well, if somebody can steal your stuff and then you got to sue them to get it back. No. And we don't need to call the police. We don't need to get to sheriff. We don't need nothing. When another man takes your property, you have every right to reclaim your property that's been unlawfully taken from you. Plain and simple.
To assume authority over our lives for a very long time. Do we have to sue them to get it back? No. Suing the federal government to get out what legally belongs to us is not only unnecessary, it's ridiculous and dangerous.
Yep.
Why? Because suing the government to get back what already belongs to you is like Ben suing me to get his car back, showing up in court and finding out that the judge and the jury are all my family members.
Right.
Right? So if the state is suing the federal government, where is the state suing the federal government? In federal courts, with judges that are appointed by the federal government. When the states sue the federal government to get their power back in federal court, what they're admitting is the federal government is the ultimate authority on its own limit of power. And when we sue the states to get our power back, what we are saying is our state constitutions are null and void, that they have no authority, and we're begging for what already belongs to us by creative right. That's why we must say we will not comply. Peaceful noncompliance is the most powerful tool. Peaceful noncompliance is the people enforcing the supreme law of the land when the government is acting unlawfully.
Imagine that. little bit on the sheriff here.
The sheriff is your most important ally in the securing of your rights, because your sheriff is not a hireling of the state, not a hireling of your county. Your sheriff is a constitutionally elected representative of the people. It is his duty by oath to secure your rights. It is not his duty to blindly enforce the law.
Okay, did we all catch that? Okay, we hire them, right? We elect them. I'm going to fix that. Because they're elected officials, they have to do what we tell them. And again, the sheriff might be the highest lawman in the county. No, he's the highest elected lawman in the county. We have all the power. We have the right to defend our life, liberty, and our pursuit of happiness with arms here in America, and have ever since 1606 with the first Charter of Virginia. But it really comes from the law of nature, the right to defend our life, our liberty, our pursuit of happiness. It's a fundamental thing at the root of all law. It doesn't matter with whatever we decide to use, whatever arms we arm ourselves with. And, due to the Industrial Revolution, now we have fancier arms than just swords and black powder and, old school machine guns. So,
if there is one office that you can take back control of to secure your rights, it's this one. Because your sheriff is the highest authority in your county. Your sheriff has an authority to deny enforcement of laws, state or federal or local, that do not secure your rights or work contrary to your rights. This is Sheriff Brad Rogers from Elkhart, Indiana. He stood up to the federal government. He got sick and tired of the federal government, the FDA and the USDA, coming in and raiding his Amish farmers in the middle of the night, trying to seize their weapons of mass destruction. Raw milk and cheese.
yeah.
He wrote a letter to the FDA and the USDA and told them that if they step foot in his county one more time without first coming to him and seeking his permission, that those agencies would have to come bail their agents out of jail because he was going to arrest them for trespass.
Now that is what's supposed to happen.
And since the day of that letter, they have never had another problem with the USDA or the FDA, because the federal government knows the sheriff is the highest authority in the county. That's why they're always trying to co-opt them. That's why your sheriff's departments are always being offered free toys and training and mutual jurisdiction agreements, and we'll let you wear our badge if you let us wear yours.
Yeah,
It's
no.
bribery, it's extortion, it's trickery
It's trickery.
for the sheriff to relinquish his authority
It's fraud.
to a lower power. Because you realize your elected representatives will do a lot of things when you're not looking, right? But they will never do what you want them to do. They will never do what you really need them to do. Not to provide you with welfare and homes and health care, but to provide you with the security, the ability to secure your own rights. They will never do that unless you expect it and you demand it.
What did she say there again? Let's go back just a hair, because this needs to be comprehended, folks.
It's bribery, it's extortion, it's trickery for the sheriff to relinquish his authority to a lower power. Because you realize Your elected representatives will do a lot of things when you're not looking, right? But they will never do what you want them to do. They will never do what you really need them to do. Not to provide you with welfare and homes and health care, but to provide you with the security, the ability to secure your own rights. They will never do that unless you expect it and you demand it. He says some bloggers and natural food writers have hailed.
Now this is what I'm talking about, folks, is, you know, somebody just made this comment out here on YouTube, right? I like Chris Ann Hall too, but she does not educate the people on remedy. And that is a primary difference between me and just about anybody else out here. Remedy, due process of law. What does the right dictate? What does the law say? Not their code. Law. Right says the law. Rights dictate the process. Like the right to petition the legislature for the redress of grievances. That right dictates we go to the legislature with a petition. The right to alter, reform, or abolish anything at any time we deem it necessary. And no special privileges or immunities shall ever be granted that cannot be altered, revoked, or repealed by the legislature. Again, hammering this right, the law, home. We must learn this right that dictates we go to the legislature, not the judicial branch. I can tell you right now, folks, they do not want us to learn this. They want us to fight in the judicial branch so they can deny. Deny. And then you don't know the law well enough, so you're going to hire a member of the bar to represent you. But they don't know the law either. They only know code pleadings. Okay? So they don't know the law. They don't know how to follow what your right dictates. Go out there and ask any member of the bar about your right to petition the legislature for the redress of grievances. And watch the deer in the headlights. Because they don't know. That's not what they were taught. They weren't taught law. They weren't taught rights as the law. They were taught code. Their Roman civil law. Their bills of attainder. They're supposed to be good little revenue generators. That's what this is all about.
Me as a hero. I'm no hero. I'm just doing my job. Remember, his job is not to blindly enforce the law. His job is to secure your right.
Yeah, you can't have a job to commit murder. You can't have a job to deprive fundamental rights. That job doesn't exist from the Constitution. But again, the people have been asleep at the wheel here. We haven't been going to the legislature and saying, hey, you guys don't have the authority to make that law, that statute. You can't delegate that power to subvert the law. Our rights as the law, you're supposed to be securing our rights, not trampling on them.
Whether you are a conservative or a liberal, I will be a guardian of the Constitution for you. I will not stand idly by while the rights of my county are trampled, whether by criminals or an overreaching government. And we have learned today an overreaching government is breaking the supreme law of the land, which makes them criminals. That is the power of your sheriff. And that ought to be the statement of every sheriff. And if it's not the statement of your sheriff, you need a new sheriff.
See again, oh, you need a new sheriff. No, what we need is to get rid of this barcode. and get rid of the bar. And I know that can be scary to some people out there that, that may think that they need somebody else to represent them or represent them. But a lot of this stuff will go away, right? All these fake pretended acts of legislation, which she's going to get to here in about 4 minutes. She even calls it pretended legislation or pretended law. That's the Declaration of Independence, fundamentally altering our form of government and subjecting us to pretended acts of legislation. That's a declared act of tyranny. What do you think they were talking about? Statutes. They were just making whatever statute they want and then coming and enforcing that by erecting a multitude of new offices, these police officers, and sending hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out our substance. This is exactly what they were doing. Okay? This is written in history.
If you don't have representatives who understand it's their duty to secure your rights and not violate them, then it's your authority to take that power back and defend your own lives, liberties, and properties.
Wait, what did she just say there? It's our right, it's our authority to take back that power and defend? Oh, that's right.
Shelley Luther did.
A defiant North Dallas salon owner says she's going to ignore a court order.
She said, taking my business without due process and just compensation is a violation of our Constitution.
The Dallas salon owner who opened up her business Friday despite state and Dallas County shelter-in-place orders saying she couldn't.
I just know that I have rights. You have rights to feed your children and make income.
For the governor to issue an order that says I cannot operate my business is a taking of my business by that government. It is unlawful, it is unconstitutional, it is null and void, and me and my staff, we will not comply.
Luther tore up the citation.
Not only is it a taking, it's a violation of the Texas Constitution, perpetrated by the governor, by the county, and by the sheriff.
Shelley Luther will spend the next week in jail and also has to pay a $7,000 fine.
She exposed the violence.
Now, if people were to learn how to effectively defend themselves, that wouldn't happen. Just saying. And I'm speaking from experience, by the way.
Violation of the rights of the people.
Right now at 11, Governor Abbott takes action over what he calls a nonsensical decision to throw a Dallas salon owner in jail.
People who did not connect those dots are now connecting those dots. And now you have a whole movement.
Why didn't she do a notice of special appearance objecting to the personal jurisdiction? Why didn't she challenge jurisdiction? Why didn't she do a motion to dismiss?
Contacting the local government, contacting the governor. This has to stop. These are our rights. The whole community came together and created a fund to pay her legal fees. They came together to keep her open because she stood.
Ian Smith and Frank Trombetti. New Jersey business owners said, I'm sorry, but you don't own this.
The State Board of Health has shut down the Atilis Gym of Belmar, but the owners disobeyed the order in dramatic fashion, kicking open its locked doors, as you see right there.
This is our property, and our Constitution secures our right to secure and defend our.
This is our property, see? You know, I mean, I'm not the only one saying it.
Property.
The owners of Atilis Gym in Belmar, New Jersey have had their license revoked for repeatedly defying orders to remain closed.
You cannot take this property without just compensation and without due process. And your taking of our property is not only unlawful, it is arbitrary and capricious, because the guy next door who owns the Walmart, who owns the Costco, gets to have unlimited number of people in his business, but you're telling us we can't open it all. So we're taking back that power and we're keeping our business open.
This morning, they were arrested. Why? For defying the state's mandatory shutdown orders.
Here's an unconstitutional government
The state's
arresting
mandatory
them.
shutdown orders? They don't have the power
And
to
here are
order
they out
us
of jail,
around like
kicking
that.
down the barriers and opening their business back up again. The power
At least not
of
under
four words.
the guise of some sort of
We
state of
will not
emergency,
comply.
of a
If you had been
yeah, I
told
gotta watch what I say, right?
that in 2020 a pastor
Of some sort of
would be
communicable disease,
arrested
that's
in
not
America for having
legitimate.
church. Arrested by a sheriff for having church. This pastor stood in a pulpit and said, "Government doesn't own my church, it's under the head of Christ, and government cannot shut down my church." And this sheriff arrested him for it. This is Florida, by the way. I was a prosecutor in the state of Florida for nearly a decade. The law, pretended law, issued by the county, mind you, contrary to the Constitution of the state of Florida, on at least 4 counts, is a second-degree misdemeanor, punishable by $500 in fines or 60 days in the county jail.
Now, Florida pastor
Gee,
is under
go ahead and
arrest after
recite
refusing
that
to stop
bill of
holding
pains
large
and penalties,
services
would you?
TJ Holmes had.
In my experience as a prosecutor in the state of Florida, I have never seen a sheriff dispatch helicopters, dispatch out-of-county deputies, and hold a press conference to announce the arrest of someone accused of violating a second-degree misdemeanor. And yet this sheriff did all of that
Yep.
because
Unlawful.
it's political. They have an obligation to blindly enforce a law, and that somehow will be excused. Samuel Adams said, "No people will tamely surrender their liberties nor be easily subdued when knowledge is diffused and virtue is preserved. But on the contrary, when the people become universally ignorant and debauched in their manners, they will sink underneath their own weight without the aid of foreign invaders."
Let's listen to that again.
Force a law, and that somehow will be excused. Samuel Adams said, "No people will tamely surrender their liberties nor be easily subdued when knowledge is diffused and virtue is preserved.
When knowledge.
But on the
oh,
contrary,
man.
when the people become universally ignorant and debauched in their manners, they will sink underneath their own weight without the aid of foreign invaders." You did not lose your business because of ISIS or people crossing the border from Mexico. America's economy, property ownership, and liberty are in jeopardy because we are complying with unlawful authority.
No, because of lack of knowledge. That's why. Not because people aren't complying, right? There's several people that haven't complied with certain things, and I'd be one of them, right? Especially with the whole mask thing. Okay, 2 different cases dismissed. Yet everybody else around me here in Boise, here in Idaho, Ada County, whatever, going to jail. Robert Jones sitting in jail for 6 months for supposedly protesting. He doesn't even know what a word protest means. And they charged him with disturbing the peace. Now, for those of you that have been following me for a while, and we've gone over the treatise on arrest and false imprisonment, it's called breach of the peace, which are assaults and batteries. Where was the threat of violence? Verbal. There was none. Beating on a bucket. Not on the sidewalk. Not even trespassing on real property. Land. Nope. None of that. So, why do you need to defend himself? Now, there's a man that I've tried to work with several years ago. I told him, I warned him, look, dude, if you're going to be out here doing this stuff, you're going to need to learn how to effectively defend yourself. You need to read the law. You need to start studying the law so you can learn how to defend yourself. Do you think he'd listen? Do you think anybody else would listen? I really don't get it, folks. Some of you are here, but how many of you are really studying? How many of you are reading your state constitutions? How many of you are studying your rights? Very few. Some of them out there, oh, well, I'm an activist and I'm this and I'm that. You're a mouthpiece. Find yourself in jail. Because that's what they do. That's what these corrupt order followers do. Okay? They arrest the mouthpieces. Unless you're like me. Stand toe-to-toe to the Idaho State Police down at the Capitol, which I reshared that video out here on Telegram. Okay? Not one of them wanted to put their hands on me. Why? Because I know my rights. I know the law. Right here. You know, when we fear the government, we have tyranny. When the government fears the people, we have liberty. It's time to learn how to go after them and make them fear us. Only if they act outside of the scope and authority of their emolument, right? Out of the duties they are to discharge. They're acting lawfully. No, they shouldn't fear us for acting lawfully. They should only fear us when they act unlawfully. So, that's the key to all this, folks, is knowledge is power. We have to get this knowledge. There's no other way around it. There is no solution. There is no coming to me and asking me to help you. That's not how this works. You have to learn how to do it for yourself. I cannot do it for you. You have to do it for you. You know, so many people all the time messaging me, I need your help. Can you help me? Can you help me? Can you help me? Again, folks, the help that I provide is education. You got to get the knowledge to do this for yourself. You're the one with the standing. You're the one with the cause of action, not me. Okay? Remedy. Due process of law. The right dictates the process. Learn it. If you don't learn it from me, figure it out for yourself just like I have. Right? Because nobody else out there teaching me. I mean, with the exception of working with Chris, learning some stuff from Chris, right? But I'm no dummy when it comes to the law. Long before I met Chris. So, yeah. Unfortunately, that man never called me. I tried to get any one of them to come meet me. I got one guy who actually took my card. But see, one of the things was behind the card, right, is doing business. Contract. Identified myself as who I was with Kirk's Law Corner, LLC. A taxpayer. That makes me the boss. Okay? That's part of why I did with that. Handing him the card. And then, any one of you want to sit down and meet with me and we'll go over the law? Why? Why won't they? Because it's a paycheck for them. The thing is what is the Declaration of Independence Day? It's talking about basically supporting them, right? Housing them. How is that not the same thing? Now we just give them a paycheck and they can buy and pay for their own house, right? Instead of quartering them in our own homes, we pay them sufficiently well enough that they can afford to get their own home off of taxpayer dollars. That's nothing but revenue generation through bills of attainder and bills of pains and penalties. Pretended acts of legislation. How is that? It might be slightly different, but it's the same. That's, this is the key, right? The key is knowledge. And unless we get this knowledge, we're screwed. The video of me down at the Capitol is on my Telegram channel. It's also on my Facebook page. Was it August 25th or August 26th of 2020? Oh, asking about the one that I just shared with Chris Ann Hall. That's a non-compliance. Rumble, YouTube, chrisannhall.com. I would just go straight to Rumble. I mean, I can share the link here in a second. So you can watch the whole thing, but that was pretty much the whole thing. There's only a few parts that I skipped ahead on, but I remember watching that before. And again, I've listened to Chris Ann Hall for years too. Starting back in about 2016 there, when the stuff was going down over in Oregon, the Malheur Wildlife Refuge. And that's actually at the time when things really started kicking off for me. Was like, oh man, need to get these people educated. Gotta get this knowledge how to defend themselves. Again, nobody wants to listen. I mean, I guess I shouldn't use the word nobody, because there's definitely a few of you here that are. And there's a few of you that are serious about it, serious enough to join my Patreon and get in on the private teachings where I go more in depth on stuff, where this is just generalization, trying to show you the law and that kind of stuff. So, I do want to thank those that have, again, recently joined my Patreon. Again, tier 1, tier 2, $5, $10 a month. It's a cup of coffee. Help support what I'm doing. Help pay the bills, right? Because this is my life dedicated to this, right? I'm working on being somebody. And like I said before, this is the year for me for the legislature. I've let it slide for a couple of years now. Now it's time. And we're getting real close to filing our lawsuits. So, like I said before, we've already got stuff drafted up. And we've been critiquing it a little bit here and there over the last week. So we're getting pretty close to filing the lawsuit. Once that happens, like I said before, this stuff gets expensive. So hopefully things work out. Of course, I give everything to God, and God provides, which He has for several years now, for many years. So I want to thank those that have tuned in, listened, and gave their support over the years. That's getting real close to go time. And our Idaho legislative session is kicking off here in just a couple weeks. So I'll be spending some time down at the Capitol in the legislature filing petitions for the redress of grievances to alter, reform, or abolish anything at any time I deem it necessary. If it's already unlawful, it needs to go away. Right now. If I have to go to the judicial branch under a constitutionality challenge, I can go straight from the legislature under the petition straight to the judicial branch as a constitutionality challenge. I don't have to file a lawsuit in the judicial branch. I can go straight as a constitutionality challenge because this is a petition to the legislature where I'm supposed to go. And again, this is how that's supposed to work for the judicial branch to provide oversight and declare things unlawfully created. If I can't get the legislature to discharge the duties of their office, then I'm going to the executive branch for internal insurrection, domestic violence, as well as going to Congress, right? Now, I get people talk about, oh, well, our legislature is so corrupt, and please stop with the excuses for not learning. That's what it really is you don't want to, you're too lazy to learn. And you're coming up with excuses not to do it. I get it. I see right through your BS. Our right dictates that we do this. It's time to learn our rights, claim and exercise those rights. Follow the law. Claim our authority. Claim our power back. And shut this down. Okay? So, I want to share that, at least my Patreon stuff, which we're doing Wednesday night workshop. But if you'd like to, just help support, $5 or $10 a month, cup of coffee. If you want to get in on Wednesday night workshop, that's tier 3. If you want to get in one-on-ones with me, that's tier 4. I'm going to get that put out there on YouTube. Thank you, Kathy. And I miss saying hi to you, Fix It Fast, and Mark out there, and Kenneth. I already said hi to you, Jax, but hi, Jax. Let's get this over here on Facebook. So that's how you can support going through there. The other way is just straight donation to the office at the office address there, 6477 West Fairview Avenue, Suite C, as in Charlie, Boise, Idaho 83704. Okay, so question out here about the difference between a petition. A petition is your political lawsuit. A remonstrance is that protest. Okay, you're protesting against legislation being made, in the middle of it being made, right? This is part of the reason why it's supposed to be read on 3 different days, 3 different times. So when they read the first bill for the first time, then you go, hey, wait a minute. No, I'm protesting against that. That's a remonstrance. Okay, and you give your reasons why. Because. No prayer for relief. Petitions have prayers for relief. That's to alter, reform, or abolish. Right? To do investigations to verify your claims that the local city police has exceeded the laws of its creation. Because the legislature can't create something contrary to the law. They can't create a policy that comes in conflict with the law. We just talked about that. So did KrisAnne Hall. So, fundamentally and principally, that's how that works. So if you want to, cashier's check, money order, postal money order, gold and silver cash wrapped aluminum foil, that goes over to the office. And of course, those on Facebook page, that's already on there. YouTube Fix It Fast got it out on there, and I put it in Telegram for the address. So, again, thank you all for being here, learning, watching, and those later watching after the live. But to take time out of your life to be here, like what KrisAnne Hall talked about, right? It's the same thing. You're all taking time out of your life to be here, which I greatly appreciate, because we're not going to get anywhere unless we get this education. And that's one thing I like about KrisAnne Hall, is she gets people fired up, but she doesn't lead them to the water. She just gets them fired up about the water. She doesn't teach the remedy. She doesn't bring you to the remedy. How to get that relief that you would like to demand. But there again, I think she admits it. They didn't even teach her the Constitution in law school. They sure in heck didn't teach her rights. They don't teach law. So, with that, much love, everybody. Merry Christmas. And a Happy New Year. Because it'll be probably no Monday Night Law for next week. Because of New Year's. Let me look at that calendar. Oh, well, I guess it'd be the 2nd. But I'll take next Monday off due to holidays. All right, folks. So we'll see you on the 9th, January 9th, and I might have a little bit of a January 6th thing with this whole Brunson thing, which I've tried to explain to people. It's a writ of certiorari. The Supreme Court is not a trial court. There's not going to be a trial. They're not going to hear the case. Like everybody keeps this hopium out there. Now, that's one time I will use the word hopium here. Okay? It's a writ of certiorari. All it is to review the trial court to see if they made any errors, and then it needs to be remanded back down to the trial court for trial. But, again, due process of law dictates you go to the legislature for this stuff. Okay? Judicial branch doesn't have jurisdiction. Alright? And we'll see you Wednesday night, patrons. Wednesday night workshop. Okay? Other than that, much love, everybody. Have a wonderful Christmas. Stay warm. Unless you're already in a warm spot. Lucky you. But other than that, Merry Christmas. And God bless you all, and thank you all for your kindness, your kind words, and your prayers. All you prayer warriors out there, thank you for what you do. We love you. And of course, all the people behind the scenes here, Michelle and Fix It Fast and Eager Beaver, and people that have been there. Those couple of people have been there for a few years with me, so, and they're still here. So thank you, brothers and sister. And of course, all the longtime followers. So, have a Merry Christmas, folks, and we'll see you next year. And except for those in Telegram, if you want to hang out for the after show, and if you're on YouTube or Facebook or Rumble, get over there on Telegram for the after show. Probably not going to be real long tonight, but a little bit, okay? So if you want to get in the after show, Telegram.